here with Chad Williams again. Chad, you're not a SEAL right now. Or
nope.
maybe, or is it kind of like the Marines? Once a Marine, always a Marine. Once a SEAL, always a SEAL? Does it work that way?
You know, we don't really grab onto that motto so much.
Well, you're not on the teams now. At least,
not
right?
an active SEAL, inactive SEAL.
So what led you to leave?
That's a good question. While I was in the teams, like I alluded to, I was filled with some hatred at first with what happened to my mentor. And that was something I really battled with inside. And I really felt like once I became a SEAL, that maybe that would be a sort of a closure moment. I really felt like I want to do this in honor and memory of my mentor. And so things are really out of orbit. Maybe once I walk in his footsteps, once I become a SEAL, like everything will coalesce. It'll all come together. Life will make sense, finally. And so I really invested a lot of what we could call hope into becoming a SEAL, and that acronym of hope, you know, holding on with patient expectation. I don't like the spot that I'm in, but I believe that once I get to a certain place, I have this expectation that things will get better. And what happened was I made it through all that training, graduated, got the trident, the insignia says you've done it, you've become a SEAL, pinned it to my chest, and it really gave a high level of expectation. It delivered, but it was short-lived. It was one of the happiest moments of my life, and it probably didn't take more than 24 hours before I really felt like I was beginning to go through some of the lowest times. And I couldn't understand why at the time. You know, I just achieved this thing that I thought would be the ultimate, and now I feel like the wind has been completely taken out of my sails. And it was years later I heard the Christian philosopher, probably a friend of yours, Ravi Zacharias, where he says, one of the loneliest moments a man will ever experience is when he's achieved that which he thought would deliver the ultimate, and in the end it lets him down.
You know, that reminds me of something. Years ago when my family lived in Virginia Beach, the pastor of our church, Spring Branch Community Church, they invited a former chaplain for the Washington Redskins, and he was there when the Redskins won the Super Bowl years ago. And so he said he remembered after winning, after they all got showers in the end, he was walking down the corridor in the stadium and saw a gate, and there was a one of the players was there looking out on the field, and he walked up to the guy and he said, "So what are you thinking? You just won the Super Bowl." He said, "Is this all there is?"
Wow.
You know, and that's something. So yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, this obviously isn't a thing that's foreign or just unique to me. I've talked to other SEALs that secretly, you know, we don't have a group talk about this sort of a thing, but you do. You see that in the lives of professional athletes or rock stars, movie stars. They have everything the world has to offer. They got the dream job. Like, look at Anthony Bourdain, that job to get to go to parts unknown all over the world. People are thinking, who wouldn't trade their skin to be in that guy's shoes? And, you know, he's taking his own life. And these other guys, you know, destroying their lives with drugs and alcohol. And we're like, why? You have the dream. You get to do all these things that, you know, people can only dream about. And maybe that's just it. Maybe having all that the world has to offer isn't really all it's cracked up to be. And I think Jesus, he framed it the best when he says, what's it profit a man if he gains the whole world, but in the end loses his soul? And so for me, becoming a SEAL, that was my version of gaining the whole world. And the reality was that my soul was not oriented correctly at the time. But it wasn't like on this seeking mission. I kind of just felt like, is that all there is? Like you're saying, like that's it. If anything, maybe I'll look forward to deploying and getting a little revenge overseas for Scott, but that's not exactly a very exciting or good fuel to be burning on. And so while I was in the teams, I just kind of put on this this sort of armor, right? That I'm good to go, man. Like on the outside, as far as my family and friends were concerned, like, hey, he did it, he became a SEAL, he's got to be on top of the world. And I don't want to let them down, so I'd be telling them, I'm living a dream, rock star. The truth, I'm more miserable at that stage of my life than I'd ever been. And so I wind up attending this event where a man was speaking out of 2 Kings chapter 5, the story of a Syrian commander by the name of Naaman, who had all this great success in battle. He had this entourage of men that highly respect him. Even the king enjoyed Naaman's company. He's this mighty man of valor. So he's basically like a Navy SEAL of that time. He had this sort of identity and status that was getting him into places. A mighty man of valor, but it was described Naaman had leprosy. And leprosy during the time of Naaman, Jesus looking back, he specifically said nobody during the time of Naaman had ever been healed of leprosy. I immediately related with that guy right there. Because here he is on the outside wearing that armor, that clothing, as this commander. He's got this exterior, like he's really got it going on, fearlessly leading his men into battle, when in reality, what's the truth? Underneath that armor, underneath that clothing, the truth is he has a skin disease that is destroying him. He's deteriorating. He's literally falling apart. This guy is a dead man walking. And that's how I felt. I felt like I'm a dead man walking. And so no doubt about it, Naaman probably tried everything he could do to fix himself of his own leprosy. But remember, Jesus says this is the impossible during his time. But he hears about this prophet, this man of God that serves the God of Israel. And he's told he will heal you of your leprosy. And so he makes this big trip, 150 miles into enemy-occupied territory. He's bringing his riches, the equivalent of millions upon millions of dollars, to pay this guy off. Do whatever you got to do just to fix me of my leprosy. And as far as he's concerned, he gets completely disrespected. Because the prophet doesn't come to the door, doesn't give him a face-to-face, tells him just go dip yourself in the Jordan River 7 times. When you come up, your flesh will be restored to you, you will be clean. Well, he becomes furious. He turns, he leaves in this rage, he's venting out loud, going on about how he expected this guy to come out of his place to put on a big show, like wave his hand over the place and call on the name of the Lord his God and strike the leprosy away. Instead, he gets treated like a normal. So he's furious, and this water thing just seems foolish to him. What's really interesting about that is that in the New Testament, it says the preaching of the cross is foolishness. To who? To those that are perishing. Well, no doubt about it, he's in this state of perishing and he's walking off, but thankfully he's got some men that care about him. They're looking out for him. They're pleading with him, reasoning with him, trying to get him to come back and just do this thing, Naaman. And so he decides, I'll do it. And I think he's really getting it now, that in order for him to be fixed, it's not the water that's going to do this. It's the God of Israel. But it requires him to be faithful, do what he needs to do. And so I think he's getting it now. For me to live, I gotta die. I gotta go to my own funeral. His real problem all this time was his pride and his ego. And so he strips himself of that pride. Imagine what it would be like to peel away the armor that he was wearing. Now he's really peeling away what needed to go all that time. The pride, showing humility, in an act of faith and trust, dipping himself in the water. I think really getting it now. It's not the water, it's that if I'm faithful, the God of Israel will be faithful, and he will do all the heavy lifting. 7 times he dips himself. On that 7th time he comes up, brand new skin like that of a baby. And so I'm on the edge of my seat listening to this, relating with Naaman.
Better than your skin feels when you get out of the Dead Sea.
Sure, yeah.
That's pretty good.
That's right. Like just baby skin. And so I feel like I'm watching a movie and relating. And then just like most movies, it's coming to an end, and maybe now the credits are going to roll, the lights are going to come back on, and you go back out into your world. But I think the point to be made is that the credits don't roll right there, that just as God provided a way out for Naaman, he's provided a way out for us as well. We just have to understand our condition. So Naaman had this sort of exterior, when in reality, underneath that armor, the truth was he had this skin disease that was destroying him. It leads to death. It's terminal. What is the exterior that we wear? Who are we on the outside in front of co-workers and family members and friends, when in reality we have a disease underneath it all? We could call it SIN positive. And guess what? The wages of sin is death. It's terminal. But God provided a way out. Not by dipping ourselves into some water, but what he did is he dipped his son down into the world. And this Jesus lived a holy, perfect, sinless life. And so I'm listening, and the picture that was given was Naaman's leprosy is a picture of our sin. Imagine the mess of being spotted and blotted, all the blemishes, right? But Jesus was holy and pure, without blemish, goes to the cross, and he trades, I love this picture, skin with you and I. He takes our leprosy, our sin, upon himself, pays the penalty of our sin in full at the cross, and the next part is very significant. He rises again from the dead. And so this shows his power not only over sin, but power over death. Not even the grave can hold him down. And he declares, because I live, you also shall live. But what's the turning point? Remember, Naaman needed to go to his own funeral. For us, Jesus says, if anyone wants to come after me, he must deny self. And what that is what the Bible calls repent, which is a word we don't use out in the street too often. It's basically, I'm not just sorry I got caught. It's I'm so sorry, I want to change. I want to turn away from this old life. I'm asking for your forgiveness. I'm throwing myself upon your mercy. You paid for my sin in full at the cross. And just as you were buried, Lord, like bury the old me, and as you rose again new, give me that new life that only you can offer. Eternity in heaven, forgiveness of sin, and a lane to be in while I'm here on earth. And so I found myself doing that March 14, 2007, active duty Navy SEAL. Still had 3 years to go in the teams, but I realized the trajectory of my life just changed. That when my time is up, in the teams, I'm a part of a whole nother kind of special forces. I want to be involved in spreading this message and really putting a dent in that kingdom of darkness out there by spreading the message.
That's so cool. That's so cool, Chad. What's your website again?
Sealofchrist.com.
Awesome. I appreciate, so what do you do now?
So now, fast forward, here I am, you know, engaged in full-time ministry. And the way I look at it is just like in the SEAL teams, we were given the task of hunting down men that strap on suicide vests, and their goal is to take out as many people with them as they possibly can in the process. They're not content with just going down themselves. If you think about it, we're going after, like, this is global war on terrorism, and we're going after the ultimate terrorist, the ultimate suicide bomber, which would be Satan. He's strapped like a suicide vest. Where? We've read the back of the book, and I'm sure he knows how it goes too. He's going down, but he's not content with just that, is he? What's he want to do? He wants to take out as many people with him as he possibly can in the process, and that's got to be personal. He wants to go after, you know, our coworkers, our family members, our friends, but God has enlisted all of us that know him. We've been commissioned, which is the very definition of a duty and a task, like in the SEAL teams, to go and bring sabotage to the plans of the enemy. And so if a SEAL team's effective at stopping a suicide vest wearer, what happens? We preserve life. And so we have weapons and tools that we use and resources to help us do the job. In a very similar way, God has armed us with the greatest weapon we have to charge the kingdom of darkness with, which is the gospel. And so he's given us that weapon and tool, and as we operate with it, it sabotages the plans of the enemy. Just wrap with this quote by C.S. Lewis. It's one of my favorites. He says, "Enemy occupied territory, that is what this world is. But Christianity is the story of how our rightful king has landed, you might say in disguise, and now he's calling us all to take part in his great campaign of sabotage."
Wow.
That campaign of sabotage, you know, I want to be a saboteur. You know, it resonates with me. And so it's overthrowing the kingdom of darkness by spreading the gospel message.
Wow. And you speak quite a lot now doing that, don't you?
Stay pretty busy. Yeah, I'm out about once a week.
Wow. Well, that's cool. Well, thanks for your service for the kingdom and for our country.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, Chad Williams.
All right.
Thank you for joining me in this series. There's much more to come. If you enjoy the research, writing, and videos I'm producing, consider becoming a patron of this ministry. Visit my brand new Patreon page at the link in the upper right of this video. You can give as little as $5 a month. Thank you.